so growing up, my influences came from all sides of the music industry, from the Winans and the Hawkins family and Tremaine Hawkins and BB and CC and all of that. That was all my whole upbringing was that, but also that was mixed with Amy Grant and Stephen Curtis Chapman, Michael W. Smith, and those are the people who influenced me vocally, who influenced my ears and my heart of how I wanted my music to sound. I didn't know I was creating a cross-genre sound that people say I have now. They're like, you don't know which one you are. It's because that's what I know. I'm not trying to contrive something. That is really who I am musically, and all those people inspired the way I do my records now. My experience growing up in the house of Dr. Tony Evans, is amazing. I literally was just at my folks' house a couple days ago in Dallas, and my dad was just walking through, about to leave. I was on the couch chilling. My dad was walking, about to go to the office, and I just stopped him and said, you're an amazing father, right? Like, I need you to know. And I don't mean Tony Evans from the radio or the books and the pastor. I meant he is an amazing father. So growing up in the house of him and my amazing mother is a privilege. I do not take it for granted, because everything that you've heard on the radio, every book, every sermon, he lives that at home. That is who he is. I'm not saying he's flawless and perfect, but he's pretty close. So I've had the most amazing upbringing, and I do not take my family and our bond for granted at all. Back to Life is my latest project, and the inspiration for it was actually coming out here to Los Angeles. I came out here a few years ago to work. I was supposed to be here for 3 months, but ended up here it's been 5 years now, and doing things outside of my box. But the friends who I've made here that are not necessarily Bible Belt friends, because it's LA, it's not the Bible Belt, in case you were wondering. Those friends have inspired me in the direction of 3 things: honesty, vulnerability, and transparency. And those 3 things were the premise on which I made this album. Because honesty, transparency, vulnerability, those things have brought me back to life. Being able to approach worship from a place of complete, just reckless abandon when it comes to putting up front has been, it's been an amazing change. You know what I mean? Like, giving God like raw materials to work with, He has been faithful to do some amazing things with them. So that's the premise of the album. That when it comes to the people I worked with, all the friends that I met working here on some mainstream projects, most of them come from church. Most of these people who are working on the biggest albums in this city come from church, and they all told me, Anthony, we want to be involved with the making of Back to Life. And at first I was like, no, you don't, you're just talking. But they all followed through. From Tim Davis, who is one of the largest and most sought after vocal producers in town, to the singers that are on this record. Literally, they would come with me and then be on a bus or flight to go sing with Janet at one of her shows. I mean, it was that kind of, those are the people that I was surrounded by. Grammy Award-winning producer Max Stark was a part of this album. So I'm really grateful that in my approach to be honest and vulnerable and transparent, I could also bring together some of the best people in music to convey this message with excellence.
It's amazing.
If I say so myself, I'm not trying to, I'm just saying. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it. When I made my album Back to Life, I was writing a bunch of songs. Now, I mentioned honesty, vulnerability, and transparency being the premise on which Back to Life was written, and I used those 3 things to write songs that are geared around worship, and to sing songs that my friends had written that were geared around worship. But at the same time, I was also using those foundational ideas to write songs outside of the worship genre. Now, I read a quote from C.S. Lewis about 4 years ago, and I kept it on my screensaver the whole time. It says, we do not need more songs by Christians about Christianity. We need more songs by Christians about everything else. And as I was writing Back to Life, I started writing songs about everything else at the same time. Like things I was going through, things I had faced. And instead of putting those on one album and having this experience on an album that was jumping back and forth between worship and real life and all this stuff that I was going through, I was like, this is all a part of the Christian experience. And so Back to Life has been out for almost a year now, and The Secret is the first single from the project called Everything Else. That will be those songs that are written obviously by a Christian and performed by a Christian, but covering everything else. It's coming. No, I don't have the date for the album yet. I I don't have a date for the release of everything else because I don't like to put pressure on myself. I have to do the finishing touches on the songs, and I don't want to feel pressure because then that turns art into science for me. And art, when you turn it into science, people can tell. People are like, that feels rushed, you know? As I mentioned, my family is very close, so any opportunity that we have to work together we are very grateful for it, and we do not take it for granted because we're a very close family. So whether it's events with my dad, my sister Priscilla Shirer, who she was doing really well. Like, listen, growing up, she just had a big personality and she talked a lot, and now it all makes sense and it's really great and it all works together, you know. But being her little brother and being able to do events together like the Fervent Tour, which originally was a 6-city tour that turned into a 36-city tour, a sold-out tour. I mean, it was not initially, it wasn't supposed to be this big old tour, but it was the first opportunity that we had to work together on the road like that, where my company, Sherman James Productions, which are our grandfather's name, Sherman and James, because they started this whole thing by being faithful. That was the first tour that I had put out. So it was like a test, let's just see how this works. And it went amazing. So it was an honor and an amazing experience. And to watch my sister grow, I love that. And part of that growth was obviously War Room, a movie she did. She was anxious about doing it. She's like, I'm a speaker, but the Kendrick brothers wanted somebody whose life was this movie. They didn't want an actress. They wanted somebody whose life is this movie, and we'll see if she has the chops to act. So initially, they were being offered like A-list actresses to do this part, and they were like, nope, we want to go with Priscilla Shirer. So we walk into a theater. I remember walking in. I saw it in Vegas for the first time, and I was like, God, please let this movie be good. Someone got a lot of my sister and tell her she did a good job, and this is whack, you know. But I walked in that theater, and 15 minutes in, I just forgot it was. I'm proud, but I just forgot it was my sister and was listening to the message of it. That movie changed my prayer life, and in turn, we wanted to take the message of that movie live out on the road. So to have all those things line up, and the Fervent Tour do what it did, and to have a live in New York, a televised thing that happened also, it was just an amazing experience to be with my family, and I will never take that for granted. If I did an Anthony Evans and Friends album, I would have Kirk Franklin writing some of the songs and doing his thing. I would have one of the most loyal friends I have, and an amazing talent. She's a monster who, right now she's on the come up, and a year from now she will take over. I promise you. Her name's Yeva, and that's all. That's it. Like, really, you're gonna rewind this interview in a few months and be like, oh my God, he was talking about Yeva, and I know who she is. So, anyway, I would feature her definitely. I would feature my friends. A lot of the singers, a lot of the singers that have supported me on my albums are monsters. Like, y'all don't have any idea. These people are crazy. So I would feature them, and then I don't know, like Tamala Mann. I love her, and David. I haven't been asked this question before. I'm trying to think. I got a chance a few years ago to sing with JoJo. You remember that? Like, she was 13. Get out right now.
The prayer.
Yeah. So JoJo, I would put JoJo on there. Just a few. I'm kind of all over the place because I've been asked this. Yolanda Adams, to be able to. I toured with her for a good year and a half, and yeah. I would really want to have like my real, like, people I really know, not just everybody famous, like the ones I really know.
Yeah.
The new album, Everything Else, was written from the same foundational concepts of Back to Life, which is honesty, vulnerability, and transparency. But as I was writing the Back to Life album, which I wanted people to be honest, vulnerable, and transparent in worship, I also wanted that honesty, vulnerability, and transparency to carry itself over into real life issues. And I believe that being out here in LA, actually, because it's just not the Bible Belt, you can't connect with everybody on a worship level. And the way that I connected was actually learning about these concepts through even back to being on The Voice. Like, I remember I sat down with Christina Aguilera at her house at one point, and she sat down next to me and was like, hey, so you're a worship leader, like, what is that? Explain that to me. And I started to talk in churchy terms, and I could feel how I was not connecting, because that's not her foundation was not that, you know what I mean? Her viewpoint at that moment was not the same as mine. So I was like, the things that are gonna connect me in this moment are being honest, vulnerable, and transparent, and like eye-to-eye level kind of talking. And that's what I want to do with everything else. I really want the listener to be encouraged to be honest, vulnerable, and transparent in their everyday life, and know that there are a lot of connecting points that happen with people outside of the four walls of church when you are doing that. Our responsibility, and I can speak for all of us, our responsibility as believers is not to just be inside of those four walls talking to each other and dealing with each other. We need to go outside of those four walls and incorporate everything else into our spiritual walk. So I remember this concept, I mean 5 years ago, I did The Voice 5 years ago, but I sat down with Christina Aguilera and Jewel, which in an interview that never aired, and Christina said to me when I was 19 making the Stripped album, she was supposed to be this pop princess. She had just done Genie in a Bottle and stuff, like all these cute songs, and all of a sudden she came out with these like edgy songs. She said she felt fear doing that. She was like, I didn't know how people were going to respond to that, but I ended up becoming a trailblazer because I just kept moving forward. And even though she was talking about the message of that album, which is obviously way different than mine, I was inspired to keep pressing forward in doing this album. And hopefully it becomes like a trailblaze moment, which there are other people doing it. There's Lecrae doing that, there's Tori Kelly doing that. They are adamant believers, but they're outside of the box, and that is what I feel called to do. Jewel said to me in that same meeting, she said, the tip of the iceberg with you, Anthony, is your faith and your Christianity. Like that's obvious. I want to see what's going on underneath the surface in your life. That is where I'm going to connect as not a churchy girl, you know? So I want to, this album is my way of being like, this is what's going on under the surface of Anthony the worship leader, but this is what's going on under the surface still through the lens of a believer. This is how I've dealt with real life issues that are outside of worship. So my encouragement and my hope for the listener is that they are moved into a deeper worship experience because they allow God into everything else.